From this moment on, this is your new home." Those were the words my father spoke, unexpectedly and with a startling finality. He told me, quite suddenly, that they had no use for someone who was ill. Then, without any real explanation, I was whisked off in a car and found myself standing in front of my aunt's house, before I even realized what was happening. My father announced that he would no longer pay for my medical bills in order to cover the costs of my younger sister's study abroad. I was completely speechless and felt as though my mind had gone blank. Even so, my aunt welcomed me with open arms, saying, "Eliana, why not become my child?" From that day onward, I started a new life under my aunt and uncle's care, and a full decade has passed since then. My name is Eliana. I have two sets of parents. One pair I regard as the worst imaginable, and the other I respect and cherish from the depths of my heart. Perhaps you are curious why I ended up with two sets of parents. The simple answer is that my illness disrupted the bonds of my family. As a child, I suffered frequent, unexplained seizures that required near constant attention. Although medication helped control the symptoms, stress or fatigue could trigger another attack. Consequently, my parents forbade me from most physical activities, fearing I might collapse. During gym class, I would forever be on the sidelines, unable to participate in sports or games with my peers. My younger sister Mia, who is 4 years below me in age, was a vibrant, athletic child blessed with remarkable talent. She carried the entirety of our parents' hopes and expectations as she matured, growing especially passionate about basketball. At a young age, she enrolled in a highly regarded local mini basketball club, and her abilities blossomed there. Later, Mia joined a famous sports association, quickly making a name for herself and always securing a starting position in official matches. She led her team as a capable representative and even practiced with players older than she was, showing no fear. I felt proud whenever I watched her, although a part of me couldn't help feeling a twinge of envy. During those years, my parents' treatment of Mia and me became blatantly unequal. Notably, this involved our meals. While Mia received carefully prepared, nutritious food, I was served a basic piece of bread and instant soup most of the time. Sometimes I was given the leftovers Mia didn't finish. Clothes were another area of disparity. Mia wore the latest, trendiest fashions for children, whereas I had to settle for old hand-me-downs, even on special occasions like birthdays, Christmas, or the start of the school term. Mia was placed on a pedestal, while I was routinely neglected. This biased treatment soon became part of the normal pattern of my life. "Big sis, want to play basketball with me?" my innocent younger sister would often ask, her voice bright. Clutching the ball, she'd look up at me with shining eyes. "I'm sorry, Mia. I can't do strenuous exercise," I would reluctantly reply, seeing her face cloud with disappointment. Even so, Mia would gaze up at the sky in thought before beaming suddenly. "Well, at least we can practice passing, right?" she would suggest, trying to hand me the ball. I thought that simple passing might not be too dangerous, but my parents vehemently disapproved. My mother was the strictest about my condition. Right as I reached out for the ball, she practically slapped my hand away and scolded me. "Eliana, you never know when you'll have another seizure, so don't do anything." Startled by her aggression, Mia froze. The basketball fell to the ground and rolled away slowly. My mother picked it up, smiling sweetly, and then handed it to Mia. "Let's practice passing together," she said. Glancing at me briefly, she led Mia away. Left behind and overwhelmed by a mix of sadness and frustration, I broke down in tears on the spot. One vivid memory dates back to my first year of junior high, when Mia was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. It was a spring day, and I felt ill from the moment I woke up. Since Mia had an important basketball match, my parents, focused on her game, left me home alone. As I lay in bed, I realized that feeling physically unwell increased my risk of having a seizure. Stress and anxiety built upon my discomfort until around midday, when I was gripped by a severe attack. Realizing I was in danger, I dialed for an ambulance myself. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on a hospital bed. A nurse entered to change my IV. She smiled gently and asked, "Eliana, you're in the hospital. Do you understand?" I nodded in acknowledgement. Observing the room, I noticed no hint of my family's presence, so I asked the nurse, "Has anyone from my family visited me?" Her reply was polite but concise. "They are expected to come tomorrow morning. You'll be on your own for tonight." That meant nobody had come to check on me since I'd been brought in by ambulance, probably because they hadn't returned from Mia's basketball trip yet. Loneliness washed over me. They didn't even care that I'd been rushed away in an emergency. It felt as if I no longer belonged in my own family, like I was merely some unwanted burden. My tears started to fall uncontrollably, and I hid my face under the thin hospital blanket as I wept quietly. In response to mounting disapproval from our neighbors over that incident, my parents began depositing me at my aunt's place more and more. My aunt, whom I will refer to as Aunt Grace, and my uncle Silas worked together at a game development company. They had no children of their own, so they were always thrilled to have me over. "It's so much fun having Eliana around. It feels like she's our child," Aunt Grace used to say, her face lit with joy. Both she and my uncle were avid gamers, and they introduced me to their favorite titles. I grew especially fascinated by one particular game they had developed themselves, set in a deeply imaginative world. Whenever I visited, we ate the same meals. They never singled me out, and my aunt's cooking was so delicious that I often found myself asking for extra helpings. My secret dream was always picking out children's clothes, Aunt Grace once told me excitedly as she helped me choose a new outfit. Those visits to my aunt and uncle became my sanctuary and my refuge. In their presence, I found the warmth I had longed for, an unspoken reassurance that I was valued and loved. When the first term of my first year in junior high drew to a close, just before summer vacation began, my father took me to Aunt Grace's house. The car was filled with more luggage than usual, which made me look forward to an extended stay for the summer. However, after carrying in the bags, I observed something uncharacteristic. My father actually came inside the house, and he seemed unnaturally cheerful. Meanwhile, Aunt Grace looked worried, as though she knew something I didn't. Picking up on the tension, I felt a sense of dread rising in my chest. I never got along well with my father, so I didn't know how to broach the subject. And then, out of nowhere, my father spread his arms wide and announced brightly, "Look, from now on, this is your new home. We don't need someone who's sick." I stood there in shock. My father's voice had a bizarrely chipper quality to it. My aunt and other relatives were aghast. They tried to protest, but my parents were too preoccupied with Mia's basketball scholarship abroad to listen. "We have to cover the costs of your sister's study abroad, so we won't be paying for your medical expenses anymore," my father said with an air of finality. It didn't matter that Aunt Grace and Uncle Silas pled for them to rethink. My parents remained unmoved. "If you're going to stop treating her, then I will take Eliana in," declared Aunt Grace in a firm voice. Strangely, my parents agreed to this proposal without much hesitation. Right then, I realized they were letting me go, disowning me, in a sense. My aunt sighed, looking furious and saddened. "Eliana, your father claimed you wanted to leave home. That's why I agreed to this arrangement. But seeing your reaction, it appears you weren't informed at all. There's still a chance to fix this. You should have a real conversation with your parents first," she told me gently, but I wondered if that was even possible. Could I truly rekindle my bond with people who saw me as an inconvenience? Even the thought made me shudder. I shook my head firmly, meeting her gaze. "Aunt Grace, if you're all right with it, I'd like to remain here. I'll help around the house. I promise I won't just be a burden. Please let me stay," I said, my voice trembling with raw desperation. If I got kicked out of here, I'd have nowhere to go. I really want to live with you, Aunt Grace. Her eyes flickered in uncertainty as she looked at Uncle Silas. My heart pounded as I waited in near panic for their verdict. Finally, Aunt Grace stroked my hair gently. Eliana, she said in a soft, warm tone, would you like to become our daughter? I glanced up and saw my aunt and uncle wearing tender smiles. Yes, please. Tears of relief streamed down my cheeks. My aunt, her own tears glistening, hugged me close. My uncle, also teary-eyed, looked on protectively. From that day forward, I became their child in every real sense. In time, a formal adoption was completed, and I was legally recognized as their daughter. Thanks to them, I gradually found the freedom to attend gym class and play with friends. My health improved so much that I rarely had to worry about my seizures anymore. Living with Aunt Grace and Uncle Silas is one of the greatest blessings I've ever experienced. Not long after moving in, I discovered a new world. I began entering trading card competitions. While there was still some risk of seizures, my aunt and uncle never told me to stop. Instead, they offered full support, enabling me to immerse myself in the game. Deep inside, I resolved to repay them in the future for all their kindness. I joined my high school's trading card club, which was famous in the competitive circuit. The environment was stimulating and challenging, pushing me to develop my skills even more. When I entered my second year of high school, I won the national championship, beating out other prestigious schools. Overflowing with excitement, I rushed home that day to share the good news. By then, my seizures had diminished so dramatically that I almost never worried about them. Then, before graduation, I received astonishing news from my doctor. I was fully healed. I had achieved the same level of fitness as Mia. After high school, I continued competing in trading card tournaments, with Aunt Grace and Uncle Silas always standing by me. Whenever I achieved a strong showing, they celebrated as if my victories were theirs. As the years went by, I maintained consistently impressive results. By the time I reached 22, I had earned the title of a top player, known as the Queen of Trading Cards. A whole decade had slipped by since I'd first been taken in by my aunt and uncle. One winter, just before Christmas, I felt it was time to do something to repay them. As I breathed in the frosty air on my walk home, I made plans for a surprise that might bring them joy. The moment I entered the house, however, I spotted a pair of shoes I didn't recognize by the doorway. "I'm back. Is someone visiting?" I called out. When I stepped into the living room, I noticed a teenage girl sitting on the couch and felt my aunt's watchful gaze. "Welcome home, Eliana," Aunt Grace said gently. "This girl, she's Mia." I froze in place. It took me a second to realize the tall high schooler was indeed my little sister. She had grown so much that I hadn't recognized her, but once I looked closer, I saw traces of the small child she used to be. "Eliana, you still remember me," Mia cried, her expression contorting as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes, of course," I replied, not entirely sure how to respond. Aunt Grace stepped forward and explained the situation. Apparently, Mia had run away from home. "What do you mean she ran away?" I asked in alarm, turning to Mia. She nodded shakily, wiping tears from her face. "Help me, Eliana," Mia pleaded, her voice quivering. She proceeded to reveal the turbulent events that had taken place back home. It turned out that my father's decision to drive me away had come as a massive emotional blow to Mia. She had begged our parents to let me return, even vowing to quit basketball if it meant reuniting our family. "I'll stop playing if it means Eliana can come home," she had cried. Our father's response was cruel and unyielding. "What nonsense! We've invested so much in your basketball. Don't you dare throw it all away. You're your mother's only child, so don't do anything half-heartedly," my mother said. My mother, in a similarly cold tone, refused to even consider Mia's pleas. They had subjected her to strict basketball-centric training from a tender age. Now, in her final year of high school, she'd mustered the courage to say she wanted to part ways with the sport. Infuriated, my father lashed out, "Don't you realize how much we've spent on you all this time? Your sister sacrificed her spot for your sake. You can't quit until you turn pro," he declared. Under that tremendous pressure, Mia finally escaped to Aunt Grace's house. "Goodness, Mia, I had no idea you were suffering like that," I said, feeling horrible. While I enjoyed a warm upbringing with my aunt and uncle, Mia had been trapped in a painfully controlled environment. "I'm sorry for not realizing anything sooner," I added. My sister shook her head repeatedly, tears still welling in her eyes. "No, you've endured so much yourself, but I'm the one coming here asking for help. I'm sorry," she murmured, casting her gaze downward. Her shoulders shook with contained sobs. "There's nothing to apologize for," I told her firmly. "I'm happy you found the strength to come. Don't worry, Mia. Your big sister is here now and I'll protect you," I assured her. My aunt and uncle both nodded in earnest agreement. Deep down, of course, I was anxious. Getting involved again with my parents scared me. But seeing Mia's desperation, I resolved to help her, no matter what it took. I formulated a plan and chose Christmas Day to execute it. Snow threatened to fall from the cold gray sky as I returned to my parents' house for the first time in 10 years. Summoning my courage, I rang the bell. The door flew open with surprising force, and both my father and mother greeted me with saccharine smiles. "Welcome back. We've been waiting for you," my father said, almost too cheerfully. They seemed to know I was here on Mia's behalf, having been informed by Aunt Grace. "Waiting? Are you serious? You threw me out of the house," I retorted, bewildered by their forced warmth. My mother, her voice dripping with insincere sweetness, clasped my hand. "Come on, it's cold outside, let's go in," she urged. "I'm fine staying here on the doorstep," I answered curtly, shaking off her hand. "I don't have time to hang around," I added. Their faces briefly soured, but then they plastered on the same exaggerated smiles. My father piped up, "Your mother and I have been so proud. You're the queen of the trading card world, right? We brag about you at work all the time. Doesn't that mean it's time for you to come home?" he asked. They rattled off praise and compliments, but it only stoked my irritation. I spoke in an even voice, controlling my anger. "Why? Because families should stick together?" I inquired. My father nodded eagerly. The words sounded ridiculous to me. These were the same people who had abandoned me when I needed them most. Still oblivious to my simmering rage, they tried to shower me with flattery. "We cleaned up your room for you. You can relax as much as you want at home," my mother cooed. "We even changed your carpet so you can practice comfortably," added my father. I saw right through them. They were simply proud that I'd gained some measure of fame and prize money. They'd woven an impressive story about how they were instrumental in my success. It was the same with Mia. All the hoopla about sending her overseas to play basketball had been for show. To brag about having a star athlete in the family, it was revolting. Coolly, I revealed my plans. "Actually, I'm considering retiring from professional trading card competition in a few more years." My parents stared at me, stunned. My father stammered, "What do you mean retiring? What will you do for a living?" I shrugged. "I'll be unemployed for a while, I guess," I replied in a casual tone. Their forced grins vanished instantly, replaced by scowls. "Ridiculous. Being unemployed? Do you know how humiliating that is for us?" my father snapped. His raised voice echoed through the neighborhood. My mother looked around, frightened that the neighbors might be listening. "Exactly, so you can forget about me," I said with an icy stare. "I never planned on returning to this house anyway," I added. What did you say?" my father yelled. His face was flushed with anger. As he shouted, I declared my real purpose for coming. "I'm here to talk about Mia. She's living happily with me now at Aunt Grace's place. I stated firmly. You kidnapped her? My mother suddenly shrieked, adopting the role of a victim. She demanded that I return Mia to her. But I stared her down. Number, I have no intention of sending her back. Absolutely not, I insisted. She's much better off away from you, I affirmed. My father looked like he might call the police, so I firmly cut him off. I've already explained the situation to the police, and I've consulted with a lawyer. Technically, you two are the offenders, I stated. Mia is 18. She can decide where she wants to live. You can't force her to come back into an environment that's harmful for her. At that moment, I noticed a few neighbors peeking out from their windows and gardens. I figured I might as well let the whole neighborhood hear the truth. These are the same people who decided to stop my medical treatment so they could pay for Mia's basketball training abroad, I shouted. My mother's eyes went wide with alarm. I continued raising my voice. And you forced Mia to train as a basketball player, ignoring what she wanted, solely for your own vanity. Suddenly, my father tried to grab my arm. I yanked myself free and continued, practically spitting the words in rage. What kind of parents are you? You tell her she can't quit until she turns pro? Do you even view your children as human beings with feelings, or just as convenient trophies to show off? Neighbors who had been watching now had expressions of shock and concern. With a final glare, I announced, neither Mia nor I will ever return to this house. If you try to get in our way, I will contact the police and sue. That's why I came here today, to make everything perfectly clear. My parents' faces twisted in frustration. They couldn't bring themselves to reply, not while the neighbors were listening. I took one last look at that house, my old cage, and strode away, determined never to set foot there again. 8 years flew by after that. When I turned 30, I finally decided it was time to retire from competitive trading card gaming. Initially, I'd planned to retire at 25, but I postponed my plans because Mia needed my support. Years of forced, intense training had eventually given her a chronic knee injury. She realized she couldn't achieve her dream of becoming a professional basketball player and shifted her sights to another goal. That goal was becoming a physical therapist. She went to a preparatory program for a year, then enrolled in a vocational school. Meanwhile, I worked diligently to fund her education so she could succeed. After graduating, Mia earned her license and committed herself fully to rehabilitating athletes with injuries. She always tells me, "I'll repay you someday, Eliana." Every time I see her, she looks radiant and confident, as though she's making up for all those suppressed years. It's hard to believe how much time has passed since that day I arrived, bags in hand, on my aunt's doorstep. Yet here I am, infinitely grateful for Aunt Grace and Uncle Silas. I now see clearly just how toxic my parents' home was. In the end, I have no regrets about the life I chose. Though I have 2 sets of parents, I hold a special admiration for the aunt and uncle who gave me a second chance and continue to stand by me, even now.